Perfect. And we are now live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Everyone watching back on the recording as well, hello. Sorry we were very early US time, and thank you to my co-host for joining. Stephen Oommen, thank you for joining. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little sleepy, man. It's 6 a.m. and I'm excited. Do not get me wrong. I'm very excited to be here, but normally I'm not gonna lie. It's a little bit of my wake up time. I go to bed late because of the kiddos and trying to get things done. So, but I'm super happy to be here.
I know that by the end of this, you're going to get so amped, you're going to be wide awake for sure. I've had a call on this topic with you before, and yeah, you get very emotive. I love it.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. Let's kind of start with your background and what you're up to now. Like a go-to-market leader for a long time, and you've slowly come around to kind of go to network. Like walk us through your journey today and what you're seeing now.
Actually, it's quite the opposite in the sense of, and this is what's very interesting about this journey. I've always been the way that I've run my businesses, go to network. I just didn't happen to know that was the term that was coined and however recently it was. So it's more along the lines of I now have a label for it, right? I always said relationships, networking, things of that nature, but I've been in business selling, go to market for 25 years, right? My first like true sales job was selling cell phones in a territory at 16 years old. And I've pretty much sold or been in some sort of go-to-market role every year since through college. And the way I've always been successful is reaching out to my network and knowing people and building relationships. And a lot of those pay off 10 years down the road, right? It's not about that moment. So few weeks ago when I was, kind of looking through this, I found this term, and I just, again, maybe I've been under a rock, but sometimes you just go about doing things the way you do things, and it just happens to work.
Yeah, I love it. You made a great post, I think it was yesterday, about dealing with sales reps who don't get relationships and understand that approach. Like walk us through that experience you had.
Oh my gosh, that was. And so here's the thing. If anyone's watching, go back to my feed, go back to my page and look at the post from, it would have been Thursday, October 3rd, right? And so there's a Charlie Brown comic thing that says, I know nobody, right? And so here's the story that happened. And I want to preface it with, there's no fault, there's nothing right or wrong. The ending of the story is simply this, is that reps don't actually get trained in this in this skill because the world has changed. So here's basically what happened. I was out to dinner. We were waiting for a prospect to arrive. I was the executive sponsor on a deal. And we're trying to, redo the org and start helping to push things in a different way. And I just happened to ask this question because I'm a big believer in relationships, right? It's just how I sell. And if you ever ask anyone, literally almost anyone, what's the first thing a rep asks when a deal stalls, or what's the first thing they go after? First thing they always ask is, hey, do you know anybody?
Yeah.
They go, but it's interesting because I'm like, why do a lot of reps these days wait till the end of a deal to ask if you have any relationships instead of just starting there and exhausting all options? So I asked this question. I go, why don't you spend more time and energy exhausting every option to get to a relationship that could refer you into an account, or, give you that social capital, that borrowed social capital? And honestly, the response was genius. And it logically makes sense. And I think at the beginning of the post, I was like, but please, nobody agree with this. And here was the response. If this rep were to go reach out and try to find someone to introduce them to the prospect, that's an extra step. Sometimes it's several extra steps. But if at least the rep could cold call, send an email directly, there's at least a chance that the prospect will return, see the email, answer the phone, anything of that nature. And that actually kind of makes sense mathematically if you just look at the front end. And so I was sitting there and I was like, I'm really super like nice about this kind of stuff, but I'm sitting there and I don't know what my face looked like because I could not figure out how. I was like, okay, it logically makes sense from this person's point of view, but
Yeah.
anybody who's been in business long enough knows that deals get done through relationships. So I couldn't figure out in that moment how to explain 25 years of experience in a moment and make it make sense.
Yeah.
But it dawned on me, literally no one's teaching these reps what it takes, the patience, the what can you do for the other person. And I've been working with this rep recently, just staying in touch. And it was interesting. I got another question because I was explaining how to make these connections. And one of the questions was that I received was, but what's my value?
Mm.
And this is something around, and it was a very wise question. So that's something I'm just realizing is a lot of this in the market today, because it's not being taught, it creates this void and vacuum where psychologically a lot of reps are like, I don't know what I can bring to the table. Why would someone want to network with me?
Do you think in part that happens because a brand new industry and selling, enough people in that space? They know people from their previous industry. So every time they're starting all over again, every 2 to 3 years, they don't have any relationships that they think they can leverage or use. Do you think that's one factor, or what are you seeing?
You cut out for just a little bit, but I think I got the gist of it, right? And let me repeat back and you just nod if this is correct. Basically, reps these days are switching companies, switching roles, switching industries, and it may be like they're selling us the same product, but they might be selling even to a different industry.
Correct.
So they're basically having to reestablish relationships. Actually, I actually never thought of it that way. What I tend to find out is that most of them don't have the right relationships to begin with, but I absolutely think that could be a factor now that you brought it up. I don't think it's like a wall. It might be a little speed bump and you have to go figure out who has the next relationship. But one of my mentors, I've heard him through the grapevine say something that I think is very powerful. And it's something that I think I've done fairly well. I don't think I'm the perfect networker. I think I'm really good at it. But he talks about proximity to power.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you network, who are all those people that have proximity to power, that just seem to know anyone? I want to be that person, right? I want to know everybody, but there's a reason for it. It's not money. It's not anything else. I actually just love talking to people. I love these type of conversations, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's the answer is if you have proximity to power and you know the right people around the world that just know everybody, all of a sudden your network exponentially expands. And then now you start becoming proximity to power and people start flocking to you. And guess what? It's almost like inbound, right? Like people talk about leads and building your network on LinkedIn and things of that nature. So, that's one of the, I guess, solutions, if you will. So you don't ever have to worry about what industry you're going to end up being in.
And then, so this comes back to the importance of being able to build relationships and of course selling that way, but also just the importance of them in life as well. Now, you're beginning to write a book. Like, it's not just GTN, it's on relationships overall. Like, tell us more about what are you trying to boil down into the 200 pages?
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be 1 page or if it's going to be 1,000 pages, right? It's constantly evolving. But what it boils down to is going internal to external. And what I find in the marketplace is everybody wants the tactics. So there's a lot of tactics that are not given. There's a few books I'm actually reading right now to make sure that either I'm not just completely redoing what somebody else wrote, right? But there's things that based on my story, I can provide. And so here's what it starts with. Everyone thinks it's fluffy when you talk about mentality and you talk about the internal and how you think about it. But I was on a show the other day and we were talking about tactics. Have you ever seen that one person can say the identical thing as someone else and it just comes out completely differently? And one people could possibly even be offended by the other person. They're like, oh, that was kind and sweet, or they'll think it's funny.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but why is that? It's the same thing that somebody's saying. So tactics, yes, they matter, but intention and the internal way of doing things matters more. What do I mean by that in a very tangible sense? In my early 20s, and most of my life, I was poor. So the truth of the matter is I had to learn this the hard way where, especially in go to market and selling, if you have that desperation, if you know you have a bill to pay, if you are just desperate and you have that commission breath, I've been seeing a lot of that on LinkedIn lately. How are you going to show up just naturally? Right? You're going to show up a little bit desperate. And so that same person, when they go to network, people are going to feel like, oh, this person's just trying to use me. Right. And so a lot of this book has to do with how do you set yourself up to just be who you need to be? That's one. But the other part of it is just through experience. How do you show up for others? And so I'm going to, trying to think about how I want to frame this because I just shared this the other day and I got really emotional because it required me to share some stories about my background. So I'm debating whether or not to go through that again, but I'll just kind of share this, right? Growing up, I have experienced a lot of different cultures. I've experienced a lot of different industries. I've experienced a lot of different job types, if you will, even though they've all been go to market. I've done B2C, B2B, so there's a lot of different, it's funny that you mentioned about networks and doing a little different things. So I've been able to build some networks in different areas, right? But in doing that, you see the connectedness between the whole world. Everyone thinks like something is so different than the next, but we're very connected. So I said this the other day to someone and I go, life is not about when networking, we think about networking, everyone's like, how do I find common ground with you? Well, that's a very inward focus, like me, selfish. I'm trying to find what in me is the same in you. And so my secret, I guess, if you will, to great networking is not to be the hero of the story. It's not about us. It's truly about finding something in the other person that you can therefore find in yourself, right? So again, it's not finding in what's in me that's in others. It's what's in others that could be in myself. So there's so much that like I'm going to go through internal, external, and tactics in this book and teach people how to be something for everyone. Mm-hmm. Because I've heard the saying, you can't be all things to all people. I believe you can at least be something for everyone, if that makes sense.
I know exactly what you mean. One small thing I've always done in that capacity is I strongly believe everyone is funny. Like everyone has a sense of humor. You just need to understand like what kind of jokes does this person make? Because the problem is when you go like, this is my sense of humor, you need to match me. It just doesn't work. Everyone is funny. Even the quietest people who you don't think would say a joke, they'll say something and then glance around and see if anyone like caught that they've got that sense of humor. So finding everyone you deal with is funny. Find out what their style of humor is. And then once you find it, you really enjoy it because it's really fun figuring out like, what is it that makes this person laugh? And you can see when you've made that bond with someone as well. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And you're not changing your sense of humor, but just like slapstick can make you laugh someday, rom-com can make you laugh another day. Like lots of different things can make you laugh.
Yeah. I just saw something in the chat about the partner channel and the ecosystem. The
Yeah.
way that I'll write about it is this, and I'm still trying to formulate some things on LinkedIn because I'm actually market testing a lot of this material with some of the
Awesome.
posts that I've been writing on LinkedIn. And I'm not a LinkedIn guru. That's not like I'm not going to write about how to get followers, right? My thoughts is I'm about getting relationships. And I hear things, the term like dark social and things of that nature. I want to reclaim that word and say, you know what? There's a lot of people that are not on social media that are very powerful in terms of our circle of influence, right? And so for me, it's about how do you have real relationships. You'll see at the bottom of a lot of my posts, it says real relationships matter. So here's the way that I would think about the partner ecosystem, the channel. Everybody could be a partner. But I'm trying to formulate this post that has to do with, would your best friend refer you? And here's the thing is, when you think about the partner channel, you think about the ecosystem, people that are you're trying to get into their network. Why would they refer you? Right? And at the end of the day, that's something that a lot of people forget about. They're like, "Oh, well, they get paid. That, the partner channel is like they're resellers. They're supposed to. That's their job." No.
Yeah.
You're borrowing social capital,
Yeah.
which is one of the most um I don't know what the word, I'm missing the word, but it's like you have to hold that dear. You have to hold that, very close. And I don't want to refer someone because it's my brand on the line. So that's another reason why a lot of people don't like to network because they don't want to put someone else in a position where, oh, if I mess up, now I've ruined a relationship.
Yeah.
In my opinion, man, that holds me even more accountable. Because now it's not just my brand, it's someone else's brand, right? So in the partner channel, you think about it from a perspective of why would they refer you? And I mean, that to me, that holds a lot of weight, but I actually care what people think, which we could talk about that here in a second too, because I think that's a philosophical discussion.
No, I love your point about social capital. I've often talked about that in my deals as well. When I'm building a relationship with my champion, I talk about the social capital, but also like their political capital. So I'll explain to them like, look, if you think if we go forward now, we're going to lose, and it's going to put a black mark against this project and a black mark against you bringing out projects, we wait. Like, I don't want you to use up your political capital in this and not be able to use it later, because political capital and social capital are both very interesting. If you use it right, it doubles. If I make a good introduction, now both of these people trust me and respect my opinion about others. If I make a good idea in my business and know how to campaign it through, more people now go, ooh, I should listen to this individual. I have more political capital. But you're right. If you make a bad introduction or introduce someone that isn't a good fit, you've lost your social capital there within that relationship dynamic. Why would that person take another introduction from you? It's not going to work. Even if you make money, great. You can't go back to that well again. Like, that person's going to know, like, yeah, don't take introductions from them. They're not worth your time. It's very, very interesting.
You know, some of the stuff I just think about this, I'm like, it's actually so basic, but we as humans, we complicate it, myself included. I always want to make sure that whenever I speak, I'm not coming from a place of, arrogance or I've got it all together. It's just like we notice these things. We're here to help each other. That's again the whole point of a network, right? Lean on each other, but also know that you're not the end all be all. I do think there's this air out there where everyone's trying to be an expert, and it's like they got to show that they're the expert in their way is the only way. I just don't believe that, especially in go to network. The whole reason you go to network is because you need something from them, right? Like, and at the end of the day, it's also what can you provide to them. So it's a bi-directional feed. But I remember years ago, I had someone in my org. It was a several $100 million business. The CFO of one of the customers, literally an extra $50,000 purchase in a small product area would have gotten this person over the line for that fiscal year. $50,000.
Yeah.
Just because the weightedness of how the plans and everything work. At the end of the day, I picked up the phone. I said, "Hey, here's the reality." And the CFO asked me, like, "Is this really going to help me?" And there was something specific they wanted. Now, could they have signed a 50,000 put over the line? Like, it would not have been a big deal. And the product itself would have helped them. But what they really, really wanted was something else. And it was more in the lines of influence and some political things that would have helped, right? With what they were trying to do in their business. I just go, no, honestly, I know it's 50,000. I don't want you to use your political capital. I use those exact words that you just mentioned. And the truth of the matter is it built trust. And to me, that's worth way more than that one $50,000 deal that would have gotten. And obviously we talked with the rep and everything about, because like that was years ago. No one's remembering that today. Right. And I think that's the other part of, I guess, the secret sauce, if you will, is truly in your head, putting monetary value to trust.
Nice.
Which again, there is no monetary value because it's infinite, if you will. But I think if people can really just hone in on that, trust is worth more than hitting quota. Let me just be very honest about that. Like, it just is.
So, well, staying on this topic, but kind of going adjacent to it then, what does the future hold for reps who just, do your traditional outbound, aren't building trust, still trying to sell value? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're pump and dump. They really do believe in the product and they're trying to sell the value of it. Is there still a space for them? Are we going to see, just like how you had the Challenger sale, where you realize that 80% of your revenue is going to come from these reps that do it differently? What does the future hold for the other reps?
If I could tell the future, I probably wouldn't be on this call, right? Like I literally was talking to my wife this morning about a stock that I had just seen, and I'm like, I get so in the weeds and busy with my life that I was like, there was a new CEO that got on about a year and a half ago, and I was like, man, I knew I should have invested in this company, and it 10x'd in like a year. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I just get so busy. So if I could tell the future, trust me, I'd be here. But here's the thing about this trust thing. It's not a two sides of the same coin. It's a different level of trust, right? Because when somebody says, when I talk about trust, I'm not saying like all these other people are out there being unscrupulous and trying to hurt customers. No, they're doing their job. And like you said, they want to find value. I'm also a believer that everything works, nothing doesn't. So what do I mean by that? I hope when I write online, sometimes you have to write in a polarizing way. I actually don't think cold outbound is dead. I don't know that it'll ever be dead. But we all know that the fastest way or the most productive way is to get an intro, right? That sort of thing, go to network. So here's my thing about this trust scenario. I think there's a place for everyone. I do think, though, with the advent of AI and all the stuff being, this is what I wrote in that post yesterday. I think Marcus Sheridan had a video that completely had my brain going, because he was talking about human-like experiences. And so he was talking about how AI is going to advance, and it's going to feel like you're talking to another human. And if you're just trying to get answers and you're trying to get something done, like, why wouldn't you just want to talk to AI to get a transaction done? Now, I think he was referring to more than just a transaction. I took it through that lens. But here's my point. To your question, is there going to be a space for people who are doing things in, I don't even call it the old way, because I think the way we do it now is only like 2010, 2012 forward, right? Yeah, I do. I just think they're probably going to be lesser paid, maybe doing some tactical work, but I also think there's going to be, I think they have a higher potential of being replaced because AI can do some of these transactional things. But the people with the large networks, the people that still want to get things done, I mean, imagine this show right now. It's hard for me to believe. I don't ever want to be this person that says, oh, this is not going to happen or it's going to happen. I'm not an absolutist, but
Mhm.
would you want to be doing this podcast with an AI version of myself right now?
No.
I mean, I'm sure maybe we would do it for fun at some point, but like, I don't know. You're a cool human being. I want to know you.
Yeah.
I don't want to know some AI mathematical version of yourself that's based on rules and this and that. And even if they say that we'll get to a place where they'll self-learn, I don't know. That's just
Yeah.
that's how I feel today.
I suppose as well, and I agree with the part of what you're saying there, where I want this conversation because I want to ask you questions that you've not thought of, and we don't know what synapses are going to fire off. Whereas if we put everything you've ever said into an algorithm and ask that questions, it could be one answer you would give, but you actually, depending on the day you'd had, what happened just before, could give one of a billion different responses. And it's much more fun to go into it seeing the answer be formulated. But I do agree, because of that, though, if there is an absolute answer, then yeah, put me on with a bot. Like if there is one outcome to what I'm trying to do and it knows the answer to it and it's going to respond way quicker than waiting on a call center or trying to fill in a form on a website, I'm more than happy to have a conversation. I actually think this was 10 years ago now. It still blew my mind. Apple nailed this experience in when you called the help center. I think it was about 10 years ago. Yeah. When you called the help center on an order and it would say, can you give me this number? You'd say the number. While it did the processing internally, it would play the sound of someone typing on a keyboard. And it was surreal because your brain was like, you gave it so much more time. Because I remember one point being like, wait, is there someone there? And it was genuinely a robot, but it had given me a human-like experience where I didn't need a human being. I was reading a number that it could search into a system and give me the output, but it gave it a human-like experience. And I was delighted with the process. It was faster than speaking to a person, but still felt human. So I agree with you. We're going to see every job eventually gets replaced. I'm not standing up on a mountain saying we're all being replaced. I'm simply saying, if you look 100 years ago, the jobs that existed aren't the same as the jobs we have today. Things move on. So I think that sales rep who is just doing cadences and sequences and knows the value of the product, but has no idea how to get into the company, I agree. I think that will fade. I think we're going to see admins own outbound. And you're already starting to see this with like clay agencies that go, hey, we can replace 10 SDRs and it's still going to be like the same quality of personalized email you were going to get before. And then you get to the point that, and this is very much like building a theory on a theory, right? So it's we're now building the fourth story of this house. So it's not this like you're saying with predictions, like if I was right, I'd be a millionaire. But we're seeing then like the value becomes the individual relationship, because if everyone is using the same system to write personalized emails, you're going to get identical personalized emails. It will be personalized to me, but whether one company sends it or the next company sends it, it will be identical. They will have my background, what I've said online. They'll be able to quote me, but it won't be a relationship. It will be personalized. And I think I saw a post yesterday, and just like how 10 years ago, the technological change was being able to have the email say, hi, name. And we're like, wow, I can send so many more emails now because it's personalized. Now that first two sentences has to be personalized. That's not enough anymore. Like a robot can do that. And so we're at the point now where it's like, is that actually a relationship? Because you can pretend to know me pretty damn well with technology now. But whether you actually know me becomes very, very obvious in, have we spoken before? Have we interacted? Not, did we go to the same college, or can you mention my sports team in the first line?
Yeah. Man, that is such a good analogy. And it brings up the thought process of emotion. And there's an actual, I love these conversations because it always goes back to more the internal, the philosophy. And I know everybody in business, everybody in the world, like we always want to go sometimes into the weeds because the other stuff feels fluffy. But like this emotional side of it, I just think of it from that perspective where you said something about like the synapses, how they fire. Maybe you can have a human-like experience and we can train machines to have emotion, but it's a mathematical emotion. And I'm just like, I had somebody ask me the other day, and this is about to get super philosophical, right? I'm a big believer, like the way that I kind of think through things, I try to extrapolate to the nth degree.
Yes, that is exactly my approach. I
Yeah,
love this.
to just figure out like, is this a good thing, a bad thing? And usually I don't actually look at the world in true good and bad. It's like, what's the results we want? So
Yeah.
somebody called me a couple weeks ago and said, hey, can I clone you and have you be the prototype for this AI AE? I'm like, cool. But it got into a conversation of what's the point? Because I'm hearing more people say, what happens when we get, I think it was John Barrows I first heard this from, where it's like when AI sellers sell to AI buyers, what's the point? And I asked this person, I go, so eventually we just replace all the sellers? It's like, no. We can have a higher form of thinking and we're released to do all these things. And I'm like, well, no, at some point AI continues to advance. And so these movies that we see can become real.
Yeah.
So here's the philosophical question. What's the point of humans? What's the purpose? What are we going to do? We're just going to sit around and do what? Like, why would these, if they get so advanced, why do they need us except for being in the matrix, like batteries, those kind of things. So like the reason I think this is powerful is because sometimes it allows you to sit back because if you're in a world right now where super high stress and everyone's like, I got to make the number. Sometimes, man, you just have to sit back and be like, okay, what's the point here? And it's the same thing as we build like everything we're talking about. I'm like, again, super high philosophical, fluffy, whatever. But I'm like, I'm for all of it, whatever. It's going to happen probably. But it's just sometimes people, I would hope they take a step back and say, okay, it's okay. What's the point?
Yeah.
And to me, I think the point is for this conversation, just become a better human, because then you can't be replaced. Because I hope AI never replaces me.
Yeah. Have you read? You don't need to read the book, but have you read The Good Life or read about? Put it in front of me. Or read about what is the study called that they follow? The Harvard study of adult development. Have you come across this?
I have not.
So fascinating study. I'll send you the links afterward. I'll put it in the comments on this as well. Started originally, I want to say 1950s, and they took 100 Harvard undergraduates, included accidentally, funnily enough, JFK, which then, like, of course, he was already a well-to-do person, but his files have since been removed, and they asked them questions every single year about their life. Do you smoke? Do you drink? Are you happy in your life? Are you married? Do you have kids? That went on for 20, 30 years. It then merged with another study where they continued asking these men and asked their children. And the study still goes on to this day. It is the longest ongoing study with not patients, but with individuals. And they have been able to track, therefore, 80 years of life across 3 generations around what makes people happy and like what impacts their health. So education, of course, is incredibly important. And essentially that was a great equalizer for access to capital. Essentially, if you were able to get educated, you ended up often being healthier. They put it down to like, well, did you have better understand the risks of smoking, etc. The quality of your relationships were as big an impact on your health as smoking and drinking.
Oh,
it's fascinating.
It's why they call it a toxic relationship, and you got to get out of them. That is so crazy.
I'll send you the study. It's just fascinating to read, and it just shows that like it's not even so much the number of relationships you have,
Yeah.
but the quality, because they help bring balance to your life. Because
Yeah.
life will go up and down. Your career will go up and down.
Yeah.
And you may get replaced in your job. But going back to the relationship with friends where you are completely and utterly irreplaceable, going back to the partner that you've built a life with,
Yeah.
it makes all the other stuff, like you said, just sometimes you just got to sit back and look around. And like jobs come and go, particularly in the world we have now. You know, it's our grandparents that had jobs for life. Our
Yeah.
parents changed jobs every 5-10 years, maybe every whatever. Now it's you see the generation younger than us is having side hustles. That's the whole thing now. It's about having 2 jobs at the same time. So what's constant is the relationships that we build.
Speaking of, do you mind if I make a hard left or a hard right in this
Do
conversation
it.
for a second? Okay. So I just saw a chat come in from Paul, and I just want to make sure it's so there's a point to this, because if it's the same Paul, I'm thinking, yep, I think it is, because I can see the thing. Okay. So this is the craziest thing. Let me first give context of why I just want to take this hard right. One of my business coaches, we had talked about this weekly action item for me, which is around networking. Always reach out to 3, try to meet 3 new people a week, reach out to 2 people that you haven't connected in a while. One of the secrets to networking, in my opinion, that's always worked for me is to want nothing in return, like literally. And so I was like, it's so funny that I see Paul, because me and Paul met because I saw him. No, he was a podcast host and he's out of Australia, and I saw his jacket and he just a great voice, just cool dude. I was like, I just want to know that guy, literally for nothing else. And we end up getting on a call, and his background is fascinating. And you know, it's interesting to see his face pop up here, because like, you know, I go through and I'm like, man, who have I not reached out to in a while just to check up on him? And this is how the universe provides. He was on the list because I reached out to another buddy out of Australia last week, and it reminded me, oh man, I need to reach out to Paul. It's been like a year. So the secret to all of networking, again, me and Paul have never exchanged anything monetary. We didn't sell each other product. But here's my belief in life. You want a cool life? Get to know cool people, right? So I think that's one of the other things that's super cool about networking is, and this is part of the book too, is I think it actually, this is my personal viewpoint on sales as well, is if the seller puts themselves in a position where they don't need anything, and I'm talking about from a life perspective, I think they just show up better. Whereas there's this old theory that a lot of sales managers wanted their sellers in debt, and they wanted them to have pressure and blah, blah, blah.
Buy that BMW on finance, because now I know you can't quit.
Yeah. And I'm like, I will tell you, I have learned so much through the course of, you know, each decade. In my 20s, I was like hungry because I had to, you know, there was a point I was even living out of my car for a little bit. Like I had nothing, right? And I had to figure it out. In my 30s, I also went through some major tragedies, but it just shapes who you are. And so I think now, like, I'm in a whole new phase of networking, because honestly, this is, and I don't mean this to be, I've just been very blessed. I don't actually need anything from anyone. I'm just in a season, and this could change like that. I'm very aware that things could change, but like I'm in the season where I actually don't need anything from anyone. So I genuinely am just trying to meet like as many people as possible, like how you and I met. Like we just were like, you saw an article, you knew Mac, and I'm like, dude, this guy's cool. And I saw that you were in Milan. I was like, I want to know this guy. What's it like to live there? And that was it. And it created this conversation, right? So goes back to the internal. Do you just enjoy meeting people? Do you just enjoy, and you would be surprised what comes out of it? Because the last 2 months, oh yeah, we didn't even actually discuss like what's been happening the last couple of months, but we'll
go on.
But the last couple of months have just been absolutely eye-opening from a life perspective.
That's perfect. That's where we're going to jump. You were at Outreach up until the summer, roughly.
Yeah. So beginning of August was my last day. Yeah.
Nice. So how did you find that? you know, of course,
Yep.
because that's more, of course, there's still relationship selling there, but that's
Yeah.
like traditional outbound,
Yeah.
to the changes you've gone over the last few months. Walk us through the
Yeah.
last 3-4 months of your life.
Yeah. So here's actually what happened, honestly. And I haven't even really this funny. This could be the big reveal because I actually have not announced this on LinkedIn like officially or anything of that nature because I'm going through a process right now. So here's what happened. Back in May, my older son was roughly about 2.5 years old, right? And in any sort of executive role, I haven't figured this out yet. So this is a me issue. I feel like every executive that I've talked to, especially in tech, is working, 50, 60, 70, like they're working ungodly amount of hours, especially even if you're in that mid-market space, founder space, things of that nature, because you're trying to make things work, right?
Global as
And
well. You know, there's a deal in Australia, there's a deal in the UK, there's a deal in San Francisco, all within 24 hours.
yeah, 100%, right? And so what was happening is because of the age of where my kids are at, they go to bed by 7:30. My first call would start usually between 7 or 7:30 a.m. in the morning, and then I don't even get off till roughly about 6:30 by the end of the day. So that's just meetings, right? And anyone who lives this life understands this. That gives me only about an hour with my family, my wife and kids. And so I'm the one that always bathes the older one and then puts him to bed, right? And then my wife takes the younger one and does the same thing. We split those duties. One day though, I and one hour a day is not enough for the family. I'm sorry, like that's more important to me. And so one day I get out of my last meeting by 7:15 and I only have 15 minutes to go and actually put my son to bed. My wife already bathes him. I walk into the room and he looks at me and he's like, 2.5 years old. Such an innocent thing that he's, heart that he has. But he looks at me and he goes, "Daddy, go work. Mommy put me to bed." And I'm not gonna lie, like I was almost in, like I really was in tears because I'm a big baby and I've just been super emotional since having kids. But that broke my heart.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so it started this dialogue between my wife and myself. And the truth of the matter is simply this: if I put a pile of cash here and I put my family here, how big does the pile of cash have to grow to be able to trade in my family? And the truth of the matter is there's no amount of money I would trade them in. So we just got to a decision that this is just more important. And the other way we looked at it is this: I've been doing this for 25 years. 25 years. And so this is somewhat funny, but I'm like, if after 25 years I can't take a couple months off to a year off and just be with family and sort of semi-retire, what I'm doing isn't working anyways. So we were like, maybe it's time for a change regardless. But again, I just happen to be blessed and in a position where I'm able to. So I basically, went and I said, hey, I'm gonna semi-retire. Because rather than wait till I'm in my 60s and I don't have health, I'm like, I'm seeing more and more people take this break. And so this is where the network starts to come in, because for the first time in my career, I wasn't going to plan anything. I didn't have anywhere to go. I was like, I'm
Love
just going to
it.
go spend time with family and just meet people. And again, this is before I heard the term go to network, and just be more reactive in my life and career and whatever, because I'm like, if I run out of money, I can always go back and get a job, I hope. Or I'm gonna find out maybe I'm not as valuable as I thought I was, and people don't really like me. Maybe that like it's that I gotta get better at myself. So you get where I'm going with this, which is like life is too short. And so what I've been doing since then is every week I just meet cool people. And there have been a lot of amazing things. I wrote you say there's some major updates coming, but I've been meeting some really cool people, getting involved in some amazing things. And it's not because I necessarily sought it out. I got very clear on what I want to do with the second half of my life because I'm in contribution mode. And so I am very clear on what I want to do, how I want to do things. But the truth of the matter is, it's a lot of this is just when you have nothing to sell, no product, no service or anything of that nature, man, these are some of the best conversations I've had the last couple months, because there's there's no agenda. Literally, there can't be an agenda, and it's the best place I think anyone can put themselves in. Um, Personally speaking, that's just, again, worked for me.
I love it. Yeah, the two things for me that are takeaways there. Like, I've always believed, like, you have to put something down to be able to pick up the next thing. And you do see people that just keep going through their career and they change job because a recruiter reached out and said, hey, I've got this job for you. And like, they never actually looked for what they wanted to do next. And then they're 15, 20, 25, 30 years into their career. And they're like, I just kept doing what was put in front of me next without thinking about it. I never liked it. Like, what are you doing? Like, I get some people don't have to love work, but like, I'm one of those people. I much prefer to love what I do than just be doing 9 to 5 and then clock out.
Yeah.
And then on the networking piece, I so agree with you, because there's this magical thing when you network with absolutely no agenda. At the end of the call, most of my calls, I always end with like, how can I help you? And like genuinely ask, like, how can I help you? Like, whether it's work or other ways. But when you network with no agenda, at the end of those calls, most people go, I'm going to introduce you to my other friend. And you network and network and network and network, because people just so love having a 30-minute conversation or an hour conversation with no agenda that they end it going, how can I help this person? Who else would enjoy the conversation we just had? And you get to meet all these brilliant, like-minded people that you're also getting this trusted handoff. So you're jumping into a new relationship starting at 5 instead of starting at 0. And you're building this network so quickly that opportunities just start falling out of everywhere.
Yeah. I want to, man, there's so much. I know I'm looking at the time and man, I just wish we could talk forever. But my biggest thing is I hope people get value out of this. But I will tell you that the more people you meet, I mean, honestly, I don't even know how to explain it. I feel like I'm at that moment where, you know, that rep goes, I'd rather do a cold outreach than get an intro, because it's so hard to explain what you're living in unless you get someone there. It's just, I almost feel like, like literally like a parent, if I'm trying to explain to my 3-year-old why they should or shouldn't, you know, do something, it's like, it's hard unless you've gone through that experience. But man, these last couple of months have just been absolutely amazing. You know, spending with the kids, and there's so much I've learned. And especially in even writing this book, just seeing how what you just said, one person introduced me to another person, then they introduced me to another person, then they introduced me to another person. And one of my plans is to create these network maps for people to help them understand that we did not get there on our own.
Yeah.
If I map back everything, it is mind-blowing to see the people that were involved in my journey. Because think about all the things, all the people that had to be connected for you and I to meet.
Yeah.
Just
the
to have
coincidences on top of coincidences.
Yeah. And so I'm more and more a believer that, I mean, it's just hard for me to believe in randomness and coincidences. So I'm just now believing like, man, if you want to call it the universe, whatever you want to call it, they're conspiring for you. Just got to be open to it. And man, it's a cool place to be, man. People are just really cool.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I completely agree. That there's one other thing I want to raise, because if you've not heard of it, I want to make sure you check it out. Do you know the concept of strength of weak ties by a guy called, surname is Granovetter?
No, you're gonna have to email that.
I'll send it over to you.
Yeah.
It's from like organizational behavior, kind of part of social science. And it's this idea, and this is why networking is so important. It's literally a scientific paper that shows why networking is so important. And it's the idea that the opportunity exists via my weaker ties with people, not my strongest. And what does that mean? My 4 closest friends likely know the same people I know. Maybe I went to primary, secondary, university with them, right? We all know the same people, or our overlap is 90%. So if I'm trying to find a new job, if I ask them, do I know anyone hiring? They know the same people I do. So what Granovetter found was, it's the strength is in the weak ties. It's the people that I know more loosely that are then plugged in with 4 other people incredibly tight, that unlocks obscene value. Because if I then find out what's going on in that network, it is a totally different network to the one that I exist within. And this is why networking is gold, because you've got your close group. So does everyone. And once you meet one person in that close group and they trust you, that entire group is now willing to work with you and is one introduction away.
Oh my gosh. So there's two things. Oh wow, that's powerful. One, because let me think about the two things. There's a game that we used to play. I don't think it and I
6 degrees of separation.
It's a game where like everyone has like a tribe or whatever, and you just keep getting someone's tribe and they grow and grow and grow. But the other part of this is I think about like digital social networks. And I just had this conversation the other day where the algorithms, let's just use LinkedIn. If you're not paying attention, what happens? You see the same thing in your feed, the same thing in your feed, the same thing in your feed, because it's sorted by relevance, right? But if you change it to recent, you start opening up your networks. But even social media, people are like, well, I'm growing my followers and growing my connection. No, you're not. Not necessarily. I shouldn't have
said that. It's a louder echo chamber. It's not,
because they're all the same people. And I'm like, that's not necessarily good. This goes back to the dark social, because there's a lot of people, and this is why there's a difference between followers on social media and somebody who has a lot of relationships. Two different business models, both can work, both are powerful. It's just being very cognizant that one isn't necessarily better than the other. It's what are you trying to accomplish and what's the outcomes, right? And I had a business coach say this one time, like, my 20 closest people can help me do more than 1 million followers on social media. Proximity to power, right? I've seen some of the most powerful people that I know, and I've noticed, their LinkedIn, like they'll post something and they'll get like 2 likes because that's not their area. But man, these are some powerful, amazingly good-hearted people. And so it even talks about, like you said, that echo chamber. And so just being able to just sit back, think, and say, what am I really trying to accomplish? Who do I really want to be in relationship with? That to me matters more for fulfillment. I know we're on LinkedIn, so it's a business network, so everyone's always thinking monetary, but I think if you put some monetary value, if that's what it takes to fulfillment, growth, your network, just these conversations, I think it'll serve people very, very well.
I think that is the perfect sign off for this. Stephen, like, where can people find out more about you? If they want to talk to you, where should they go? What would you love to speak to people about?
If I can help someone, like, DM me, right? Like, that's fine. Go on LinkedIn and whatnot. If you're trying to hit me up because you're trying to sell me something, like, I'm seeing all, like, I'm sorry. Like, but honestly, if you just want to have a conversation, I can help in any way. I don't charge. Like, I'm not one of those guys like, hey, you got to pay me for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Like, things will come. I'm a networker. I'm good. I'm okay. Right. So just, what do you need help with? Right. And I mean, my expertise is, in a few different areas. Typically I can help people think through leadership, entrepreneurship, sales, relationship building, and just thinking about the nuances of the skills. Now I can't talk to the same person every day for, whatever, but you guys get the point. I'm definitely open, and that's my jam.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was so much fun. We are keeping this conversation going offline for the foreseeable future. I'm going to send you the Grenovetter article, the Harvard Adults study on human adult development. I'm going to put it in the LinkedIn comments and the YouTube comments as well, so people can find that later. If you want to learn more about GoToNetwork and how it can help you in life and business, feel free to check out comsor.com. Feel free to reach out to me as well, Christian Jackenfeld. But again, buddy, thank you. This was genuinely so much fun. And this is when business can also raise you up. This started as a business conversation, but was so much more.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invite.